It's Nikki with Andorra Consulting. If you're a construction business owner and you are busy selling work and still don't feel secure, this is for you. Because in construction, revenue is loud, but margin, overhead, and cash tell the truth. This is how we work with construction business owner by using these 3 numbers to make the financials usable and not just done. Today, I'm going to walk you through the 3 numbers, the 3 KPIs, and what the red flag look like, and a real example of how they expose the truth for a company that look profitable on paper. Comment numbers below. I will send you the exact report to pull after this live. All right, let's get into it. So the 3 numbers that tell you if you are actually winning. We are talking about the first one is the job margin. The job margin is the profitability per project. So profitability by project. If you don't have a job costing in place, you won't know your profitability per project. The second one we're going to be discussing today is the overhead rate. So your monthly operating workflow. So how do you operate monthly? What is your monthly overhead? The second one is the cash runaway. So what is the cash runaway? The cash runaway is your working capital reality. Okay, so this 3 number that I was telling you, that is also called KPIs. And the KPIs will be your gross margin by job. So when you are talking about your gross margin by job, you have to ask you this question first. Is the work himself produce margin before overhead? If your job margin is wrong, every decision is the guesswork. So this is your first question you have to ask yourself when you are talking about gross margin by job. Let's dive into the overhead burn rate. In construction, what I know is that most of the construction business owner like you don't really care about overhead, your operating costs, right? So when I'm talking overhead, this is the question you should ask yourself first. What does it cost to operate the company each month? When you answer this question, then you will solve your problem of the overhead. So your margin per job must cover your overhead before you call anything profit. So your gross margin per job is not a profit. That is the gross margin per job. We say gross margin per job before the overhead. Your cash runaway. So your cash runaway is, this is the question. How long can I operate if receipt slow down? We all know that in construction, cash timing is uneven, right? So this cash runaway is what gonna be keeping you out of stress, that gonna prevent you from surprises. So if you know these 3 KPIs, you will understand. You are understanding your your company, your construction company, you can tell easily if you are winning or not. Let's dive into the KPI number one. KPI number one is the gross margin, the gross margin by job. How do you calculate the gross margin by job? The gross margin percentage is your revenue minus your direct cost divided by your revenue. So what is the direct cost? What cost are we calling direct? We are calling direct cost the labor that is tied to the job, the material and freight, subcontractor, equipment rental that is also tied to the job, permit, dumpsters, disposals, electricity, inspection. Those are the costs direct to the job, and the change order costs. Those are the direct costs that is tied. Those are the direct costs. And if you take your revenue and you remove those direct costs, you will have your gross margin amount. And then you take that gross margin amount, you divide it by your revenue, you come up with your gross margin percentage. So let's talk about the CFO reality check. So when we say CFO reality check, we are talking about how good your report. We don't talking about how good your report look like. So if you want to check if your costs are sitting in overhead that belong to a job, then your margin is overstated. So your net bid is priced on fiction. What am I saying that? So we gave you what we call direct costs. So if you do not have any of these, or one of these is count as an overhead, that means your gross margin is not correct. So any of these costs that I have listed here should not be counted as an overhead. Your overhead is your operating expenses, not the job expenses. Your job expenses, those are your direct costs. Your operating expense are your overhead costs. So none of these should be listed as an overhead. If it's listed as an overhead, then your gross margin is overstated. And the possibility that your price based on the bad price is higher. So I always say to my construction business owner client to always ask themselves this key question: do I trust the job profit enough to price the next job? So if you are having difficulty answer this question straightforward, then your system is broken. So what is the common red flag that you will see on the KPI one? So if you see this, like best job is always the biggest revenue job, or you see a large uncategorized or miscellaneous expenses, then this is the red flag. Yes. So I was working, I'm working right now with a roofing company, a 5.5 million roofing company that I'm doing the cleanup project for them. And the first thing that I noticed, they have 1.5 million as listed as uncategorized expenses. This is the red flag. You should not have 1.5 million uncategorized. If you have this on your book, then it's time to do the cleanup. So if the permit, dumpster, or tolls is listed as an overhead or the inspection or the electricity on the job site, if those are listed as overhead, then you have overstayed, your gross margin is overstated. So you have to do the reclass, to come up with your true gross margin to be able to bid the next project correctly. So how we fix that? We will do the standardized job and the cost and the phase coding. We will do the allocation, the payroll allocation by job weekly. We will define one count as a direct cost and create a clean change order workflow. So this is how we help you fix this type of mistake. Like I was saying, there was no job costing system in place on this company that I'm working on. And the 1.5 million uncategorized. So we are trying to, to build that system, the system that will tailor the business structure, make sure that everything is lined up in the way it should be at the beginning. So this is the decision rule. So if you cannot trust your job margin, you cannot trust growth. So if you want to grow, then fix your mess first. Fix the mess and then scale. Once you fix the mess, then you will scale. So the second KPI is the overhead burn rate. Your overhead burn rate is what we say. The overhead burn rate is your overhead rate. It's also called overhead rate. To come up with your overhead rate, you have to know your monthly operating costs. So you have your monthly operating costs that you divided by your monthly revenue to come up with your overhead rate. So what is the overhead rate? What is the overhead? What do we consider as overhead? We are talking about the administration, payroll, office costs, general insurance, and software subscription. We are talking about the marketing, and we talk about the professional fees like your accountant or your legal, your lawyer, and also the vehicle that your company has that is not assigned to any job. Those are your overhead. You own your payment. If you are owner, you get paid, and you get paid that the payment that you get that is not it's not job related. Those are the overhead. Those should be counted as an overhead. So if you have this, breaking down and with the number and have your true number of the overhead per month and then your revenue per month, then you can come up with your overhead cost, that your overhead percentage that you're going to be allocated per job. Okay, so what is the CFO insight? So what do we do? What we recommend. So growth can only help when your margin is healthy. That is always what I will say, what I say to my customer. Growth only helps when margin is healthy and overhead is controlled. So when you started breaking down your overhead like this and come up with your percentage that you allocate every month, then this is the big step for controlling your overhead. So if you cannot control your overhead, scaling on the slow margin, scaling on the low margin work with heavily overhead, we create a larger version of the same stress. If you don't have everything that is controlled, you don't have it, you want to scale, then when you scale, you will, that you'll come back to the same mess. So this is the break-even rule. Gross profit must cover overhead before you call anything profit. So before you call anything profit, your gross profit should cover your overhead. Whenever is left, then is your profit. So if your overhead is unknown, pricing and hiring decision will become risky. So this is an example on KPI 2 that I illustrate here. If you see on the graph below, we have so this color, blue color, is the direct cost. So like you will see, the direct cost will be always the biggest cost of the project. And we will have the overhead is, because the overhead is a percentage of your revenue. Generally, it won't be bigger than the direct cost. The direct cost is the higher one. So the percentage of the direct cost will be higher than the percentage of the overhead that you will see here on the yellow one. And then that this whenever is left, that is what we call the net profit. So this is how your graph will look like. If you have your job costing in place, you have your job profitability, and your overhead is higher than your direct cost, then there's a problem. Your overhead should not be higher than your direct cost, because your direct cost is what is tied to the job. So it always going to be higher than the overhead. So what do we do with the KPI? So how the KPI will help you to know the dollar amount, monthly dollar amount, and help you to watch for overhead trip like subscription, vehicle, and administration. So if you use overhead percentage to set up the pricing target, then that is a good move. So that will help you, to set up the price target. And then if your revenue grow, but the percentage of your percentage of your overhead is getting worse, then you have to do the investigation structure. Sometimes so this is what we call the variance analysis, to see where is the linking, where the money is linking. The third KPI is the cash runway. So the cash runway is your cash in the bank divided by the average monthly cash flow. Your cash that you have in your bank divided by your average monthly cash flow. So this is how you prevent surprises. So generally, we know that in construction, cash always feel tight. So payroll generally is weekly, collection are daily. Material often upfront load. You pay material upfront before you take it. If you go to Home Depot, you have to pay your material before you take it. And then the sub deposit, so the sub deposit, also the draw approval take time. You have working, and when you do the draw, when you submit the draw, that will take time to get approved before they release the money. And there's another thing that we call retain, that we know that the retainage, some of the project, you will see the owner of the project will take like 5 to 10% retainage. They will retain 5 to 10% of your revenue. So this is the money that is holding by someone else, and that is what you have earned, right? And they retain that for the close on the contract. And this is also something you have to track as well. You have to track your retainage. You have to make sure that the change order was billed. If you don't have a system in place that will help you track those retainage, or a structure for the workflow, structure the workflow for the change order, then you are putting yourself in, in the stress that it is surprising on the cash, the cash is stress that you shouldn't be in. So you can be profit. That's what we always say. You can be profitable on paper, but still run out of money. So that is why the runaway cash, we tell you whenever the business can absorb late payment, change order dispute, or slow money with a panic. So, and yeah, this is how your cash runaway will help you to protect your business and protect supplies for the cash. So this is an example of how the cash runaway is visualized. So you have your runaway here and you have your target. So your target is at 3. Your runaway is at 1.5. And so what is increase your cash runaway for is that the invoice early will reduce, you reduce bill, or you have a tighter collection and follow-up cadence. So if you have you follow up the collection, you track your aging report, you watch what is in there, and you have a good policy on your collection and the follow up, then you should be able to, to be in the good place. And you also have your change order that is bill, and you plan to buy material against draw. You don't just buy material without having any draw. So when you have a draw, you say, I'm gonna have draw this day. For this draw that I'm taking out, I will buy material on this much. So everything is a plan. It's not our surprises. This is how you protect your cash runaway. And you protect your cash runaway, and you protect your business as well. So how to use those 3 numbers? I split here into weekly, monthly, and quarterly. How can you use this? So I always call this is your operating rhythm. So your weekly with payroll coded by job, right? And then we have the change order log and prices. You have the bills sent on schedule. You have to watch this weekly. And the AR follow up. This should be weekly. Now, what do you do monthly? What you do monthly is you review your job margin monthly. You review your overhead percentage monthly. So because if your operation cost, and this month was, let's say your operation cost this month was 10K, and next month maybe it's 11K. Maybe your revenue changed from this month for the other month. Maybe you have increase on revenue, and then you have decrease on revenue, something like that. Maybe, yeah. So that is why it's better to review this monthly. So once you calculate your overhead, it cannot be, the same thing every time. So you have to review it monthly to make sure that it's updated and close your book faster. And what do you have to do quarterly? Quarterly, you have to review your pricing and your margin target. You have to review your capacity and planning. What do I have to do? So for this quarter, do I have to hire? Do I have to buy equipment or not? Or rental equipment? So this should be a plan. So you have to review your planning every quarter, your tax estimate and your cash planning, also your customer and the risk. So those are what you have to review quarterly. So you have on this screen that you are seeing here, what do you have to do monthly, weekly? You have what do you have to do weekly, what do you have to do quarterly and monthly, and what do you have to do quarterly. So what is the rule here? Make decision from job margin and overhead. You have to make decision of job margin, overhead, and runaway cash. So you don't feel surprised at the end. So what report? Let's talk about the report you should be pulling on your accounting system that will help you to calculate those 3 KPIs. So you have to pull your job profitability, by project. And you also have to have your P&L monthly or current year, your balance sheet, your AR aging summary, your AP aging summary, your cash flow statement or cash summary. So this report below that I have listed here will help you to calculate, the 3 KPIs that we talk about. The job, the job margin, the job growth margin, your cash runway, and then I'm sorry, and then how to read them. You have your profitability. You have your profitability that you're gonna do validate the direct cost and the change order. This is how you do to validate them. So when you have your job profitability, that will help you to validate your direct cost. So your percentage of your direct cost should not be your percentage, your direct, I want to say your overhead percentage should not be more than your direct cost percentage per job. You have your P&L. Your P&L will help you to separate the overhead and the direct cost. Your AI and AG will help you to calculate the cash timing and the risk that can occur. Your balance sheet, that is where you will know your real working capital. Your cash flow will help you to see your cash movement. Okay, so let's talk about how this KPI review, if you are winning or you are losing. So this is one of my customer, is a construction company, general contractor, 3.2 million per year. He's busy. The P&L look fine, but the payroll is tight when he reach out. And this is how we help him. First, we implement the job costing, and we calculated the job gross margin. So before we do our cleanup, it thought that he was doing 32% per job, gross margin per job, but after our cleanup, he was doing 18% of the cleanup. So why it did not have the true number? Because the job cost sitting on overhead. This is what we noticed, right? So we see the permit, the dumping fee, the dumpster fees, and also the electricity on the job site, the small tool like the rental, and also some labor was not allocated correctly to the job. So we did the mapping, we did the payroll allocation, and we tied those to the job. And that gave her 18% of the core margin, the job growth margin. And the second one we did was the overhead percentage. So the monthly overhead was 75K. Before the revenue, it was 24% of the revenue. But after the target, it went from 24% to 18%. So we separate the true overhead right? Because if you recall, on the overhead, what you accounted overhead, we had dumping fee, we have electricity, job site electricity fees, the inspection, permit, some labor, also the dumpster. That was counted as an overhead. That is why the overhead percentage was 24% of the gross revenue. But in fact, when we do the reclass, the overhead was 18% of the revenue. And we also look on the cash runaway. So the cash runaway, we have 62K that was outflow, and it was received to 210K per month. So the cash run away was less than nine days. That was a red flag. So we review how often it bills, and we clean up everything that was on the bill. We schedule, we put in place the collection policy and the follow-up. So we reduce the collection days. How long can they have can they hold for the receivable? And we also help them to track their retainage. So they went from 9 days to 5 days without more sale. So we were able to reduce their cash away to 5 weeks instead of 9. So yes, I know you will say, okay, you talk about the gross margin, you talk about the overhead percentage, you talk about the cash runaway. So how can we know that we will calculate it, but we will have the numbers? So how can we know this is the red flag? How do we know that it's a warning sign? Okay, so as break down here, for your gross margin, your job gross margin, if it's less than 15%, it's usually not enough to crush you. But if it's between 15 to 20%, that means it's fragile unless the overhead is laid. If you have your job margin that is between 20 to 30%, so that means you have a healthier gross margin. And now it depends on the overhead. And if you have if it's more than 25%, if your gross margin is more than 25%, you have to verify, because you might miss some costs. You want to make sure that the 25% gross margin is true. And let's talk about the overhead percentage. The overhead percentage, if it's more than 25%, so that means that your operation cost is heavy. So your gross margin should be strong. So you have more than 25% overhead, then you have to, make sure to adjust your prices or adjust your overhead, either way. So between 18 to 25%, this is the common zone. You have to watch out, right? But if you have between 12 to 18%, so it's a good sign, right? If it's less than 10%, then there should be somehow a misclassification cost. So you have to do your math here. Make sure that everything that is listed as overhead is really overhead, that there was no misclassification from the overhead to the direct cost. The cash runway, less than 2 weeks, is an emergency. If you have between 2 to 4 weeks, that means it's fragile. If your cash runway is between 4 to 8 weeks, stable. If it's between 8 to 12 weeks, that is strong. And your cash runway to be calculated by the cash that you have in your bank, divide by average monthly cash flow, and you convert them into weeks, and then you will come up with the numbers here. If you're between 4 to 8, you are stable. And you are strong if you're between 8 to 12 or plus. Okay, so this is what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you for listening to me. If you think you need our help, we are here to help you. We can do the cleanup. Reach out to us, and we will look into your structure and see if anything has to be done, what is missing there, and we will move from there and tell you what have to be done. And we can work together to help you have this KPI in place, and you can tell after we work together how healthy you are and how comfortable you feel to be on the next job. Okay, so as I will say, I'm Nikki Motin. I'm a construction CPA, and see you next week at the same time. Bye-bye.